welcome to the Young Turks. I'm Anna Kasparian. John Iadarola joins me for the first hour of the show today. Brooke Thomas and Maytha Al-Hassan will be here for hour 2. Cenk Uygur will be returning tomorrow.
Fine.
So later on in the show, we are going to show you some clips from my very first Cuomo experience.
Oh, was it your first?
It was my
I
first,
thought you'd been on there before. Okay,
I was on Reliable Sources a few weeks ago.
Okay.
But it was an interesting experience. I can't wait to talk about it a little bit. But I'm also gonna give you some inside baseball on an exchange that Cenk and I had prior to that appearance happening. And I'm sure he assumed that he was trying to help me, but he hurt me.
Oh, I don't know anything about this.
So that'll be a fun thing to discuss. But before we get to that and all the other stories we have, I wanted to give you guys a quick update on what happened on the House resolution vote yesterday pertaining to Donald Trump's racism. As we had reported yesterday, the House got together and voted on a resolution to condemn Donald Trump's racist tweets. Now, Republicans lost because the House did vote overwhelmingly in favor of condemning Donald Trump's racism. However, there was this kerfuffle regarding Nancy Pelosi breaking an antiquated rule regarding insults toward the president, right? So according to House rules, you are not allowed to deem the president or the president's statements as racist. That is an actual rule in the House of Representatives. And so the racists within the House of Representatives got very upset at Pelosi when she said this.
These comments from the White House are disgraceful and disgusting, and these comments are racist. Every single member of this institution, Democratic and Republican, should join us in condemning the president's racist tweets.
I was just going to give the General Speaker of the House if she would like to rephrase that comment.
I have cleared my remarks as a parliamentarian before I read them.
And take it, and I ask the words be taken down.
Okay, can I just say that I love mic drops? And I don't know if she intended to do a mic drop there. And you know that we're pretty critical of Nancy Pelosi and her insane weakness when it comes to fighting back against Trump. However, I cleared this with the parliamentarian, drop the mic, walk away with your fuchsia pantsuit. Like, no, I love it. Like, I love that moment. And I just wish we would see more of that from Pelosi. Because what's gonna happen?
At the right time.
At the right time, exactly. Not in any instance, but in this instance, it made sense. I think it makes sense in a lot of other cases where she has unfortunately shown cowardice at the face of Trump and the GOP. But nonetheless, that was a good moment for Pelosi, and I'm glad that she didn't back down. Now, Doug Collins was the one who wanted to get Nancy Pelosi's statements stricken from the record. And he actually wanted a vote on that, to have Pelosi's statements toward Trump stricken from the record. Well, how did that turn out?
What purpose does the gentleman from Georgia rise?
Mr. Speaker, I have a motion at the desk.
Clerk will report the motion.
Mr. Collins of Georgia moves that the words of the gentlewoman from California be stricken from the record.
The question is on the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The nays have it.
Speaker, I request the yeas and nays.
On this vote, the ayes are 190, the noes are 232. The motion is not adopted.
That's all I have to say.
Yeah.
Like, what's gonna happen, right? So what would happen? I'm glad she stood her ground there, because what are they gonna do? Are they gonna handcuff her? Are they gonna lead her out of the House floor because she told the truth about Donald Trump and how his tweets and his statements toward freshman Democrats were racist? They were racist, period.
Yeah, I feel a little bit, like watching the entire thing develop over the past day, I've just felt a little bit crazy. Like, so he said those things, and so they're gonna censor him, or whatever. Okay, that's fine. I think that's a fine thing to do. It just seems like for Nancy Pelosi to be like, you know what, I'm gonna be strong on this. Should he be taken out of office? Definitely not. Don't even talk about it, don't even think about it. But we can say that thing he said was bad, and we should leave him in a position where he can do and say things like that as long as he wants.
Yeah.
And then, like, so not only do we have that process, but inside of that process, we're reminded that you're not even allowed to say that a racist thing is racist. So if you have any hope that like if Donald Trump decides to put tanks in the streets, that they're gonna stop him. They can't even label what he's doing as a negative thing. And then we're worried about what's on the record and what's off the record. Like, does anybody in America outside of that building right then care? She said it, okay? She said it. It's out there. It's on the internet. Who cares if it's on the record?
No, you know,
the whole thing's like a circus.
I care, and history cares that it's on the record. You want to know why?
Okay, yeah.
Because this is unprecedented. First of all, the statement was accurate, but this is unprecedented. And to have this in an official record, right, where the House is voting to condemn the president's statements as racist. It's just important to have that in an official.
And I'm trying to do it.
Like, I had this, it wasn't really a debate, but I had this back and forth with Brooke on the show yesterday because I understand the frustration and I'm right there with you guys in that Pelosi has no problem showing strength in this case, but it needs to extend to actual, like, actions that really matter, that would lead to true consequences for Donald Trump. Now, are these real consequences for Donald Trump? He's racist. The only thing it really does is it hurts his ego that it's now in the official record, right? But the fact of the matter is, I just think that to have the House of Representatives include this record that has this vote, that has these statements, clearly identifying Donald Trump's comments as racist, is important because you can look back at all of these Republican members of the House who voted against the resolution. Only 4 Republicans deemed Donald Trump's comments as racist. Only 4 of them voted in favor of condemning Donald Trump, okay? All of the other ones are now on the record saying, no, we don't find him racist, or we refuse to condemn his racism. So I just think it's important to have that on a record.
Yeah, I think it's silly that, I don't know, do you know the name of the individual who called the vote to strip it from the record? The guy that stood up? I don't remember his name.
Doug Collins?
Was it Doug Collins?
Yeah, Doug
Okay,
Collins.
so whoever Doug Collins is, that like the issue he has is with it being on the record. And by the way, that they even brought up that 1984 precedent for why you can't call something racist. Who remembered that? Somebody did research to try to find a way ahead of time to derail this thing. That's what they're spending their time on, is trying to find a way by going back to something that Gingrich started in 1984. It's all just ridiculous. There's real stuff going on, and like we got 4 Republicans who acknowledge that it's racist. I mean, I would say probably none of those 4 would even go farther than that, but that's what we've got.
So let me give you the name of the 4 Republicans. You have Representative Susan Brooks from Indiana, Brian Fitzpatrick from Pennsylvania, Will Hurd from Texas. And to give Will Hurd some credit, he's been vociferous in terms of criticizing Donald Trump and his immigration policy.
Okay, good.
And you also have Fred Upton in Michigan. Now Brooks, keep in mind, is slated to retire at the end of her term. And the other 3 are so-called moderates who are in swing districts. And that's relevant to bring up because if you're in a predominantly red district, right, and the voters are rabid Trump supporters, you're probably not gonna wanna do the right thing or be principled in your approach because you're more concerned about your political career than doing the right thing.
Yeah.
In this case, I mean, even with the Republicans who did do the right thing, it was a little easier for them to do so. And Donald Trump went after them already and was upset that there wasn't unity within the Republican Party. But one other thing I wanted to add was that when Doug Collins stood up and pretended like he was outraged at Pelosi calling Donald Trump a racist, House Majority Leader Steny Hoyer should have had Nancy Pelosi's back. But instead, he's like, I'm sorry, but we're not following the rules here. Let me give you the exact statement. Majority Leader Steny Hoyer announced the parliamentarians' decision against Pelosi, stating that by calling the remarks by Trump racist, she had violated the House's rules. Here's what he said: the chair is prepared to rule. The words of the gentlewoman from California contain an accusation of racist behavior on the part of the president, as memorialized in Chapter 29, Section 65.6, characterizing an action as racist is not in order. The chair relies on the precedent of May 15th, 1984, perfect year for this, and adds that the words should not be used in debate. Steny Hoyer, sit down, sit down. I mean, the weakness of Democrats is incredible to me. We are not following the rules. We need to lie to the American people and pretend as if Donald Trump's statements are not racist because of this ridiculous, antiquated rule from 1984. Sit down.
I disagree. I mean, obviously, I agree with the general point that they're being weak, but he's in charge of the rules. It's the rule. Change the rule. The rule's ridiculous. It should have never been established in the first place. But if it is the rule, he's just acknowledging it.
We have a Democratic Party that's trying to play by the rules when you have an administration who does not care about the rules, thinks they are above the law. Like, we're in a completely different era of politics.
Yeah, change the rule.
And okay, sure, change the rule. But in the meantime, don't follow the rule. Because you're essentially enforcing a rule that forces people, representatives of the American people, to lie about what's really going on. It's mandated deception.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. That just to me is a very small part of how ridiculous and horrible this entire thing has been. To me, it's like, well, if we're gonna go to the circus and it's like someone's trying to cut the line to get popcorn and we stop them, I don't know, like that just to me seems like a pretty minor thing. I agree with the general point, and overall the issue is that, as we pointed out earlier, the fact that we can get Nancy Pelosi and a few others to be strong in this very limited case when it doesn't really cost them anything and there's no risk to it, but not on the larger point of whether Donald Trump should still be in a position to be president.
Yeah. Look, I think for me, just final thing I want to say about this. I get what you're saying, this is just a minor thing, why are you harping on it? It's because it's indicative of what's happening in government right now, right? Okay, and it's indicative of the weakness that's been so frustrating for Democratic voters. So it might seem like a small thing, but I think that this small thing represents a bigger problem. It's a symptom of a bigger problem within Congress, and specifically the Democratic Party. All right, we got to take a quick break, but when we come back, Kris Kobach is a terrible person, and he was given a platform on CNN. We're gonna hear him defend Donald Trump and fail at doing so. And then later on, we will show you a little bit from my Cuomo appearance. Come right back.
We hope you're enjoying this free clip from the Young Turks. If you want to get the whole show and more exclusive content while supporting independent media, become a member at tyt.com/join today. In the meantime, enjoy this free segment.
Hey guys, welcome back to TYT. Anna and John with you. So I'm gonna tell you about cool partnerships that we have, okay? Because these are people who have companies that we agree with and wanna do business with, and there aren't very many of them out there. So we wanna show them some love. Squarespace happens to be one of them. John, do you have a website?
I don't think it's public. I started working on one and I gave up.
So I have a website. Brett has a website that he tweeted about over the weekend. And I had an easy time building my website because of Squarespace. I didn't get a nice discount, which you guys would get. So if you go to squarespace.com/TYT, you will get a 10% discount, which is pretty awesome. And my favorite thing about Squarespace is you don't have to be some internet genius. They have various templates that you can use, different models depending on what you're doing. Maybe you wanna run a business, you can create your website there for your business. And they have payment methods for customers, it's awesome. So go to squarespace.com/TYT, get that 10% discount. Also, one of my favorite partners is Aspiration. Aspiration is a financial institution that has morals, believe it or not. They wanna make sure that they invest money ethically, and they also wanna make sure that they pay you guys back in your savings account. They pay 2% interest on savings accounts, and we are gonna add one other benefit to all of this by giving you 1 month of membership for free. So go to aspiration.com/TYT, sign up for an account, and then after that, you just go to tyt.com/free30, the number 30, and you can go ahead and get your 1 month of free TYT membership. See if you like it. There's lots of exclusive content for our members.
That was good.
Was it?
Yeah.
Well, it's not like I do that every day.
I guess that's true. But most people would be like, if they had a teleprompter, it wouldn't have been that smooth. That was pretty good.
Smooth.
This is why you're on CNN.
Professional. And then finally, we have a very exciting guest coming up for the second hour of the show next week. Vic Mensa is his name. He's a rapper and an activist, and he will be joining us on Tuesday, July 23rd at 8 p.m. Eastern time, 5 p.m. Pacific. What I'm excited about is not only is he gonna stick around and do the second hour with us, he's also gonna have a conversation with Cenk on The Conversation.
It's a good place to do it.
It's gonna be fun.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to the rest of the news.
Would you still support him as president?
You
have to think about it.
Really tough
you have to think about whether or not you would support a racist. Really?
That's Kris Kobach, a 2020 Senate candidate, a former Kansas Secretary of State. He is very well known for stoking racial tensions, and I'll get to those details in just a minute. But Kris Cuomo had him on his program last night, Cuomo Prime Time, to discuss Donald Trump's racism and bigotry toward freshman members of Congress, particularly the progressive women of Congress, which we've been talking about all week. And Kris Kobach, of course, is a racist himself, so of course he's going to defend Donald Trump, and you're about to see that in this next clip.
Okay, well, first of all, if you look at the words themselves, when the president said, I think people are focusing on that these members of Congress should go back to the crime-infested places from which they came, right? So where are those places? Well, in AOC's case, it's the Bronx. In Tlaib's case, it's Detroit. And in Omar's case, it is originally Somalia. Those are all crime-infested places. And in Somalia's instance, there's terrorism too. So it's a fact. He's just, to simply state that fact is not racist.
So
Cuomo closed his eyes like he was trying not to hit him.
That's so funny because I have an earpiece, obviously, so I can communicate with the control room throughout the show. And Brett Ehrlich was like Cuomo's face. So you guys are on the same wavelength. So Kris Kobach, watching this segment before my appearance on Cuomo's show yesterday was frustrating because I wanted to be part of this conversation. But look, Kris Kobach is well known for his race politics. In fact, so well known that even the editorial board at the New York Times wrote a scathing op-ed about him when he was running to be governor of Kansas. So there's the headline, Kris Kobach is the GOP at its worst. In his race to be Kansas's next governor, which luckily he lost, Kobach represents the ugliest part of today's Republican Party. He also sounds a lot like the president. Now in that piece, they also said the following: he's best known for he's best known for having been the vice chairman of President Trump's ugly voter fraud commission, spawned in 2017 to root out the millions of illegal voters who Trump's ego pathetically and falsely claimed had cost him the popular vote in 2016. Now that commission, as we all know, disbanded shortly after because there was absolutely no evidence indicating that undocumented immigrants were voting in the general election. No evidence at all. What a waste of time and resources.
It's so weird that he couldn't find it when there were millions of them in California alone. That's so weird.
It's so crazy. I mean, Trump is so thin-skinned, can't accept the fact that 3 million more people voted for Hillary Clinton as opposed to Trump, which really highlights our issue with the Electoral College. But anyway, jump in, John. What do you make of all this? Why are they? Look, I'm glad that Cuomo is giving a voice or giving a platform for progressives because that hasn't been happening on cable news ever. But at the same time, I mean, Kris Kobach was the second well-known racist that was given a platform on CNN that day.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I guess he's in a tough position because Kobach's a horrible, horrible guy. His track record's absolutely terrible. He will not rest until there's not a single black vote cast in a major election. That's the only, I'm sure he has other aspects of his ideology, but that's what he's going for is to stop non-white people from voting. But I mean, he's had multiple, high-profile runs. He's a member of the GOP. We're in a terrible position where some of the most horrendous people, like he was a narrow second to Richard Spencer and how disgusting he was, but he's a relatively influential member of the GOP, so I guess they're gonna have him on. He's gonna be running again. If he fails there, he'll probably be brought into the Trump administration if there's a second term. That's who he is.
Yeah, and I will give Cuomo credit because he is not the typical cable news host who just sits there and allows a terrible person to lie and say whatever he or she wants to say. He does push back. There's a little bit of that in the next clip we're gonna show you.
If he says, I'm not a racist, then it gives guys like you cover to defend him. But let me ask you, what would you do if the president said, I am a racist? That's why I said it. What would you do?
Then I would not defend him because there's no excuse for racism in America.
Would you still support him as president? You have to think about it.
Really tough
you have to think about whether or not you would support a racist? Really?
I'd have to know who was running against him.
A racist?
Look,
an admitted racist, you'd have to know more?
I mean, you're making...
Kris, come on, man. It can't be that partisan.
These are ridiculous hypotheticals because of the people running against him right now.
It's ridiculous that it took you that long to answer it.
So I like the way that Cuomo handles these types of interviews because he does push back. At the same time, I want to do even more pushing back given what we know about Kobach and his record. So in that last clip we showed you, he said that there's no excuse for racism in America, except he is racist himself. And the efforts that he participated in really bear that out. When it comes to fear-mongering about immigration, again, I'm going back to the New York Times editorial board and the piece they wrote about him. Mr. Trump is a newbie compared with Mr. Kobach. Starting with a failed run for Congress in 2004, Kobach has regularly sounded the alarm that illegal immigration and widespread voter fraud are destroying this nation. Indeed, he has suggested that fraud played a role in his congressional defeat. His crowning achievement as Secretary of State was a law passed in 2011 requiring people to prove their citizenship before registering to vote. Or rather, it was his crowning achievement until a federal judge this year struck down the law as unconstitutional. In the course of that case, Kobach so violated basic courtroom rules that he was held in contempt and, among other humiliations, ordered to take 6 hours of legal education. This is an individual who went to Yale Law School. And had to be punished for, the fact that he was violating basic courtroom rules.
The classic nature versus nurture dilemma.
He also got a kick out of indulging the dark fantasies of on his talk show, such as the 2014 caller fearful that the immigration policies of the then President Barack Obama would lead to ethnic cleansing of whites. So he would have people, people would call in and he would entertain the idea that Obama was trying to ethnically cleanse whites in America. So, what did you think he was gonna say? In response to Trump? Of course he's gonna defend him.
I will never understand how a party and this side of the political spectrum that implies that they are strong and the lefty guys are weak are terrified that they're all going to be murdered. Like if I came on the damage report every morning and I was like, we got a lot of news we're gonna get to, but first of all, I think badgers are coming for me. You would not think of me as an alpha male, but these guys are terrified always that every person that looks like me is gonna be murdered. I think that's a likely outcome. To be so crippled with irrational fear is not a position of strength.
Also, just going back to the first story we did today where we talked about Steny Hoyer, we need to follow the rules and we can't call the president racist because that's against the House rules. Like, is that what you're afraid of? Right?
Steny Hoyer might start killing white men.
Right, exactly. That's the point that I'm trying to make.
He's an intimidating man.
In this age of unbelievable and almost unmitigated weakness on the Democratic side, really you're gonna try to make the argument that Democrats are pushing for ethnic cleansing?
Yeah, they are. And he was also gonna take all your guns, and how did that work out? Like all these bold predictions, if they don't come true, it doesn't matter, they don't learn anything. The thing about that interaction that I found a little bit frustrating, and it's one of the reasons that I didn't talk about it this morning was, although I'm really torn on this, sometimes when something is so clearly racist, like Donald Trump's rant, you want to take it and you want to mash it into the face of the people who refuse to accept that racism is a thing and that it's driving American politics because they refused to accept that. But I'm also on the flip side, it's never going to happen. There is never going to be a thing that is said or done that is finally going to make that night, Hannity, Tucker Carlson, Ben Shapiro, all gonna be like, they got us. That's racist. It's never ever going to happen.
It'll happen. You want to know when it'll happen?
When?
If a US president says something negative about white people.
That's true, but I'm talking about.
Can you believe the racism?
I'm talking about actual racism, but yes, I get what you're saying. Because the thing is, it's fundamentally disingenuous when we ask Kris Kobach or insert whoever, was that racist? And he responds with no, when what he means is, I don't care about racism. It's not an issue. Is it a coincidence that all of these people who just happen to never see things as racism also don't think that it exists? And if it does exist, it's an issue. To think that that's not biasing their response, they will never admit it because they don't care. Kris Kobach's a professional politician with decades of experience. And if you watched the body language and the way he responded to Chris Cuomo's questions there, it was like you were asking a little boy something and he couldn't help but do tells that he was lying. When he finally responds, he starts smiling because he knows that what he's saying is not true.
Such a good point.
And then when there's the follow-up, he looks up in the air and sort of sighs like, are we really gonna go through with this? Sure, I wouldn't support him. Because it's not true, he doesn't care. Of course he would support Donald Trump if he was a racist. The percentage of Republicans who would support him would maybe go down by a percentage point if he came out and said, I'm a racist. It wouldn't matter at all.
You're absolutely right.
All of this is ridiculous, and I understand why people like Chris Cuomo and even myself at times will try to get them to say that because we care about this issue so much that we just want to finally have it break through for them. But it's not gonna happen.
Not gonna happen.
Not because they don't accept that it's happening, but because they don't care if it's happening.
I think it even goes further than that. They love that it's happening.
Yeah. They don't accept that it's a problem, fundamentally.
That's perfectly stated. All good points. You know what else has a lot of experience? You mentioned Kobach and how he's had years of political experience. That cowlick he had in the back of his head in that one B-roll shot, it was very distracting. We might need to think about replacing that.
Well, on this particular week, I can't criticize him for that because I recently cut my own hair and missed a patch in the back. But it's cool, I only went to the gym before somebody finally told me about it. So in that way, I'm basically Kris Kobach.
Brett told you about it?
Yeah, he finally did. Sophie noticed but didn't say anything. So that's the sort of working relationship we have. Thanks, Sophie.
That was a good play, Sophie. All right, moving on, we have some other news. I feel weird like doing a story about myself, but
you'll push through, don't worry.
Yeah.
Get used to it.
All right. I was on CNN and look, let's keep it real. I was invited to appear on CNN, Chris Cuomo's show in particular. Cenk is on vacation. I'm going to assume that they had me on because Cenk wasn't available. So let me just be self-deprecating ahead of time. But nonetheless, the conversation was about infighting within the Democratic Party, which has been an issue. Of course, Pelosi has been going after freshman Democrats pretty aggressively lately in the form of op-eds that are written by Maureen Dowd in the New York Times. And so I was invited to speak about this issue with Howard Dean, who has become quite a centrist. I mean, previously he was certainly more progressive and now he self-identifies as a centrist Democrat. So I thought there was gonna be like, a little bit of fighting, but that actually didn't happen. He said a lot that I agreed with. Take a look.
So Anna, if you're nodding in assent, but you also want to go down the impeachment road, why are you nodding in assent?
Well, I think that it's important to hold Donald Trump accountable, but I think that it's ridiculous to shortchange ourselves and pretend as if we can't do both things. We should absolutely focus.
But they can't, Anna. They couldn't even get money for the kids on the border. What have they done?
I completely disagree. So first of all, that appropriations bill that the freshman Democrats voted against, which is what frustrated and angered House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, essentially gave Donald Trump $4.6 billion in taxpayer money with no strings attached. There were no safeguards in place to ensure that Trump actually improves the squalor that these children and these migrants are currently being detained in. But at the same time, I think that it's ridiculous to say that you can't focus on economic injustice in America, the fact that our healthcare system is broken, and also hold the president accountable. I mean, that's the whole point of having the Democrats control the House of Representatives. If they're not going to mitigate the damage of the Trump administration, then what's the point?
I think you pulled him towards your position there.
You think so?
At least a little bit.
Who?
Cuomo.
Cuomo, yeah.
Yeah.
That was really the only moment where there was disagreement, which I was shocked by.
Yeah.
So the impeachment issue, it's controversial within the Democratic Party. And this whole idea that Democrats can only focus on one thing. We've put men on the moon, right? I mean, the New Deal, like we've done incredible things. I don't understand why we just allow Democrats to shortchange themselves like that. Like, oh, no. You either only focus on impeachment or you only focus on policy. I mean, we have hundreds of lawmakers. Why are we not doing both? That was the point that I was trying to make. And again, that last point, why would we want or fight for Democrats to control the House of Representatives? Why did the blue wave even matter? If they're not gonna mitigate the destructive behavior of Donald Trump.
Yeah, and so in the area of like the sort of vein of impeachment, dealing with Trump, investigations, that sort of stuff, totally true. If they're not doing that, then what are they really accomplishing in that time? On the other half, you have the sort of delivering on policy, which is obviously going to be near impossible because the Republicans control the Senate, but that doesn't mean that they shouldn't be trying. They don't just they punch their card and then come back in a year and a half. No, they still have to be trying to move the needle in terms of public opinion on these policies and those sorts of things, laying the groundwork to eventually pass them once we have a sane Senate and president. Yeah, the idea that you could only do one of those two things, I honestly don't know what Kris Cuomo, I think he was playing devil's advocate, trying to get you and Howard Dean to disagree, because I don't think he actually believes that.
I agree with you. So let's take a look at the next clip. And I just want to warn you, we are going to come back to the impeachment part of the discussion because there is an update on something that happened in the House. Take a look.
He can do our dirty work for us just by opening his mouth. If we don't have a positive message of something we're going to do better, it is not enough to be just against Trump.
But look, Kasparian, we've all seen so many elections now. At the end of the day, it's me versus you. You know what I mean? It's whoever the two people are. It becomes intensely personal and negative, and that's what happens to, unfortunately, work best in messaging in campaigns. How do you deal with that and win?
Well, I think the freshman Democrats actually handled this situation quite well, and I think we can learn something from it. So for instance, they had a press conference yesterday to respond to Donald Trump's racist tweets. And what they did is they used that opportunity to not just condemn Trump, but also talk about what their vision is for America. And so you have Representative Ocasio-Cortez talking about how we need free public education on a college level, also talking about the healthcare system and what she envisions as a better system moving forward. You can condemn Trump, but let's not be hyper focused on Trump is the boogeyman. Give Americans something to vote for.
Okay.
That's pretty good.
Thanks.
Yeah, and Howard Dean
was not
mostly agreed.
There was literally no moment where we disagreed in this exchange, which is why I'm not really showing you much of what he had to say, because had he said something and we debated, then it would make sense to show you like the full context of what he said and what I agreed with.
No, that was a great experience. The only thing that would have been better is if we came back not to the horn, but to the Howard Dean scream. That would have been a little bit better, but you had limited time. That was a great appearance. I think you were a great avatar for our values. You were a strong communicator.
Thank you. Yeah. So one final thing that I wanted to mention was what happened in the House of Representatives today. So the House actually voted to table a resolution by Representative Al Green to impeach President Donald Trump. Now, Nancy Pelosi is still very much against impeachment. So she was clear about that in this vote, and I'll give you her statement in just a minute. She says, we have 6 committees working on following the facts in terms of any abuse of power, obstruction of justice, and the rest that the president may have engaged in. That is the serious path we're on. Not that Mr. Green is not serious, but we'll deal with that on the floor. So the vote marked the first time the Democratic-controlled chamber has weighed in on impeachment, an issue that's created a widening schism within the party. We've talked about that quite a bit. So impeachment came up during the appearance on Cuomo, and I tried to make my case, see if it was convincing or persuasive.
What would be the basis of impeachment? Because I don't know that you would be able to make it on the case of dead migrants. I mean, nobody should like that, but you'd have to show a direct line of a culpability. Where do you see it?
Well, there's quite a bit. I mean, if you don't want to focus on that issue, I mean, there's the fact that Mueller's report gives you various examples of obstruction of justice. You also have the issue of Trump using his charitable foundation to enrich himself. There are numerous conflicts of interest and violations of the emoluments clause in our Constitution. And so I just want Democratic leadership to fight Donald Trump as aggressively as they fight the so-called squad, the progressive freshman Democrats.
That last statement, I would, you're speaking off the cuff and sometimes you don't say things perfectly. I would actually like Democratic leadership to fight Trump aggressively and not so aggressively when it comes to
not that you want to continue fighting the squad and then match it for Donald Trump.
So I wanted to make that clarification because I think the way House leadership is treating freshman Democrats right now is egregious, and I don't agree with it at all. But
the intro to that question was a little bit weird, where he was sort of implying that the impetus for impeachment is purely on the migrants who have died.
There's a reason for that. So we had just finished talking about the situation with migrants dying, and I mentioned how at least 24 migrants have died under Donald Trump's watch. And so I think in that statement, I included something about impeachment, and that's why Cuomo started the question that way. So it wasn't his fault. But what I thought was really interesting is I didn't get any pushback from Howard Dean. I really thought I would. And before going on air, I got a text from Cenk. This was yesterday at 6 p.m. Eastern time. I'm about to go live on the main show, and he's like, hey, obviously you can't call me now because you're about to do the show, but I just need to know what you're planning on saying during the segment. There's a reason for it. That's all he said. And I said that I would, I'll call you when I'm on my way to the studio for the appearance. Then I called him and homeboy didn't answer. And I was like, what if there's something I need to know? Maybe there's like some inside info that I need to know, and if I don't know, you're gonna sabotage me. I don't know, I had all these thoughts in my head. That I sent him a text message and just said, call me, didn't respond. So right before the interview started, my heart was beating quickly because I thought there's something I'm missing. I don't know what it is, but I'm gonna do my best. And then I remembered, I lead this show every day. I know what I know. It's gonna be fine. Everything's gonna be okay, and luckily it worked out. Later on, Cenk told me that he accidentally locked his phone in his car, which is what Cenk does.
Thank you. What was he gonna tell you?
I have no idea. At this point, I don't even care. But he's
he made it
I'm
sound
sure he thought he was gonna help me, but all he did was harm me in that case.
Call me back. There's a reason, and there's an alligator approaching him, and he needs your help. I need you to call me now because I'm gonna lock my phone in my car soon. What? Okay, well,
anyway,
thanks for your help, Cenk.
Enjoy the underside of that bus. All right, we're gonna take a quick break. We'll be right back.